Initially, the Soviet Union only recognised 2 deaths as the total number of casualties caused by the Chernobyl disaster: Vladimir Shashanuk and Valery Kondymchuk. By late 1986, Soviet officials revised this tally to 31, finally acknowledging the deaths of 29 additional plant workers and first responders due to acute radiation syndrome during their efforts to contain the accident. While there is still some international debate surrounding this number, a rough agreement is that the total stands at either 31 or 54. However, there is considerable ongoing debate concerning the accurate number of deaths due to the disaster's long-term health implications, with estimates ranging from 4,000 to some 93,000. The uncertain and contested mortality rate of the Chernobyl liquidators is a major source of disagreement with regards to the disaster's accurate death toll. Following the disaster, the Soviet Union mobilised approximately 600,000 liquidators. Through either direct recruitment or conscription, men were called upon from all corners of the Soviet Union in an effort to decontaminate and stabilise the compromised reactor and its surrounding areas. Whilst the immediate human tragedy of the Chernobyl disaster is undeniable, what is often forgotten is the wider costs to the zone and its inhabitants. Entire villages were bulldozed during the clean-up effort. One such settlement is Kopachi, a mere 7 kilometres away from Reactor 4. The story of Kopachi is as fascinating as it is tragic. Having left the Dugger complex, turning left to rejoin the main highway, with Chernobyl town at our backs, it's not long before the sight on the horizon sends shivers down my spine. The mammoth metallic archway of new safe confinement. This is the archway that now entombs Reactor 4, and it punches high into the skyline. It is now abundantly clear just how close we are to the epicentre of the disaster, but it seems like we're stopping here as Igor pulls the car up to the side of the road. We've stopped at a roadside monument. This structure predates the disaster. It's a World War II memorial that is still looked after by those working in the exclusion zone. However, our true destination is what lingers in the tree line behind the monument, the Kopachi kindergarten. Kopachi was located just a few kilometres south of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. As with all of the villages in the area, it was thriving in 1986. It had a young population and was home to 1,114 people on the day of the disaster. After Kopachi village was evacuated by the authorities, as an experiment, all the houses were torn down and buried. The disaster highly contaminated Kopachi with high levels of radioactive fallout. The only traces of the village left today are a series of earth mounds. Each mound contains the remains of a building and is topped by a sign with the International Radiation symbol. A bulldozer would dig a large trench in front of each house before burying the building and covering it with earth and flattening the soil. The kindergarten and one other brick building are the only 2 structures that remain standing. What the Soviet government failed to recognise was the fact that these highly contaminated buildings and houses would seep radioactive isotopes into the water table. Burying the buildings drove radiotoxins deeper into the environment. The soil and water surrounding the former village remain contaminated with radioactive materials such as plutonium and cesium-137. Several radiation hotspots can be found in close proximity to the kindergarten, including by a tree at the front door. It is important that we recall the 0.3 microsievert per hour limit for a Western European city when we realise the Geiger counter is reading 8.86 microsieverts per hour on this specific hotspot. The counter did peak at around 10 microsieverts per hour off camera in this very spot. However, upon entering the kindergarten building itself, the radiation dropped significantly. The fallout was simply unable to penetrate the interior of the building due to the concrete construction. The kindergarten has a strange, eerie feeling. Even after 33 years, including 8 years of tourist visits, a much larger number of personal possessions have been left here in comparison to anything we've seen so far. Prized childhood toys, books, clothes, shoes, bedding and furniture, all left due to the haste of the evacuation. Almost like a scene from a horror movie, we entered a room filled with double bunk beds. Once the daily refuge for sleepy children, now simply left abandoned, surrendered to the contamination. In this room, whilst relatively high in terms of city centre standards, for the zone, the background radiation is still considered very low at approximately 0.28 microsieverts per hour. Whilst the Kopachi kindergarten is far from a large building, it wouldn't be hard to spend hours here. The longer you looked, the more the little details in every inch of the room were revealed. The signs of past life are everywhere. Plush toys, once the centre of a child's life, loved and cherished, now left behind to rot. We force ourselves out of this room to make use of the limited time we have to continue exploring the rest of the kindergarten. Every surface of every room shows signs of the years of neglect and lack of maintenance. There will become a time when the already crumbling buildings of the zone become simply far too dangerous to enter. More rooms, more abandoned toys. Toys for the children of all ages. Kopachi was home to 1,114 people in 1986. The children of Kopachi will have loved this place. Despite being almost literally in the shadows of 4 nuclear reactors, this was a place they could feel safe. These were children. They didn't understand the significance of the technology that brought them and their families to this part of the world. All they knew, or would have come to know given their age, was the utopian future of a highly desirable Soviet atomic town. Alas, the events of April 26, 1986 silenced that enviable possibility forever. We now go over to the other side of the kindergarten. Judging by the furniture we saw, this was for the older children. Unlike the other side, the room was filled with single-height, larger beds, but still, the same toys and bedding were left behind. Some possibly posed by other visitors, some perhaps untouched for 33 years. Again, background radiation readings were nominal here. Not great, not terrible. The weather was uncharacteristically sunny and mild for a Ukrainian April throughout the duration of my trip. The warm sun casting shadows through the windows, highlighting the beauty in the decay. It was almost as if the zone had come alive and was wanting to show itself in the best light. A pleasant moment to enjoy amidst the sadness of an abandoned kindergarten. It would be easy to miss something that would appear so blindingly obvious somewhere else when you're within the zone. It wasn't until we turned around to leave this room that we noticed this little scene in the corner. It was time to leave Kopachi and head to our next destination. Before viewing the next clip, it would be prudent to explain a few points first. Each click from the Geiger counter is the device registering a radioactive particle. It is the frequency of this click that gives a clearer indication to the level of contamination, rather than relying entirely on the number on the screen of the counter. The number on the counter appears to be delayed. This is because it is calculating a dosage value over a period of time, microsieverts per hour. Because this measurement is taken over a period of time, this is what makes the device appear to spike rapidly. The Geiger counter's internal alarm was programmed to be activated at 3 microsieverts per hour and above. Towards the end of this clip, notice how moving the Geiger counter from the soil to the concrete results in the reading dropping dramatically.
Ja.
Back in the car, we head north once again, moving closer to the reactor complex. We take the right fork in the road and drive parallel to the power plant's cooling channel. The unfinished cooling tower intended for reactors 5 and 6 is directly ahead. As Igor explains at the end of this clip, the water in this cooling channel froze for the first time in 2001, as until this date, this channel still contained the warm outfeed water from the plant, until the final reactor, unit number 3, was shut down permanently in 2000.
And on your right hand side is that
cooling channel. Water in this cooling channel was iced for the first time only 2001 because last reactor.
We briefly stop at the corner of the cooling channel to take some pictures. This is a good vantage point to see the three main landmarks in this part of the zone: the entombed Reactor 4, the unfinished reactors 5 and 6, as well as the unfinished cooling tower. We now skirt the perimeter of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant complex. When the city of Pripyat was built, in order to demonstrate their ambition for the future, the leaders of Pripyat commissioned a large statue of Prometheus to be erected next to the cinema of the same name in the town centre. After the April 1986 nuclear disaster, the statue was decontaminated and moved to its present-day location in the Garden of Remembrance at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant complex, only a few hundred yards from Reactor 4. Continuing to drive round the complex, we pass the Chernobyl nuclear power plant fire station.
Inside the fire station of nuclear power plant, fire department still functioning. Six firemen came from here to put out the fire without any special protective gears because they had no idea about danger.
It's only when driving around the power plant's perimeter does one begin to realise just how ambitiously large the Chernobyl nuclear power plant complex was. We arrive at our final destination at the power plant, the Chernobyl observation deck. As the complex is still a functioning nuclear site, visitors are asked to respect a 200-metre observation distance from new safe confinement. Here, Igor shows us a series of images of this very site through time: 1986, 2004, present day. Due to the bright sunlight, the present day image on my photograph is not that clear. The image on the laminate is something similar to this: the view of the original Reactor 4 sarcophagus entombed within new safe confinement. When one considers the fact that we are less than 500 metres from a compromised reactor core, new safe confinement does an exemplary job at containing the radiation of a compromised reactor, with Geiger counters reading an impressively low 0.92 microsieverts per hour. By simply moving the counter behind the concrete monument, the readings drop further to around 0.86 microsieverts per hour. An incredible feat of science and engineering when one considers that inside the new safe confinement, 200 metres from the exterior of the original concrete sarcophagus, Geiger counters read in the region of 200 microsieverts per hour. There's time for a few last pictures before we get back into the car to travel to our final, best known and most impressive destination of the tour: Pripyat, the abandoned city, once home to 50,000 people.